Namaskar everyone and welcome to the Gita Satsang for today. Let us start with the Prarthana. By the Guru's grace and the will of Sri Krishna, we have all assembled for this Gita Satsang. May we have their guidance to be able to learn and adopt the things which will help us to grow spiritually. Let us chant the shlokas. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय हरये परमात्मने प्रणतः क्लेशनाशाय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः रामानुजदयापात्रं ज्ञानवैराग्यभूषणं श्रीमद्वेङ्कटनाथार्यं वन्दे वेदान्तदेशिकं यो नित्यमच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुग्म व्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धो रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणं प्रपद्ये. So with prayers at the lotus feet of the Acharyas, let us go to our topic for today. So we have seen in the previous 17th shloka about how Krishna describes that he has different kinds of people who turn to him. First, he talked about people who do not turn to the Lord, and then he spoke about those who turn to him, and he said that for me, the jnanis are the most dear. So now he's continuing further and explaining more that why he feels that these jnanis are the best in his opinion. So in the 18th shloka, he says, Udara sarva evaite jnani tvatmaimame matam asthita sahi yuktatma mame vanuttamam gatim. So he says all these are udara, they are noble, they are very generous. All of them, all the types of people who turn to him, all his devotees. But I deem, I say, I announce that the wise, the jnanis are my very self. Why? Why is saying that? Because that jnani, being fully integrated, is devoted exclusively to me as the highest goal. So here Krishna says that all my devotees are very dear to me, but the jnani I consider as my very self. That jnani is my atma. He's saying like this. So if we just summarize what all Krishna, how he has brought this topic up to this point, in the 12th shloka, he explained about all his greatness. He said, all chit, all achit, everything I am there, everything is because of me. Then, in the 13th and 14th shloka, he said that although I am in everything and everything is in me, people are not able to understand this because of the effect of my maya. Then he explained that mameva ye prapatyante maya metam tarantite. Only by doing prapati to me, only by doing sharanagati to me, that is the only way to overcome this veil of ignorance. Then he said that these are the categories of people, the Muda, the Naradhama, all those people who don't come to him. Then he also explained about Artha, Artharthi, Jnani, Kaivalyarthi, everybody who comes to him. And he said that the Jnani is the most dear to me. Now Krishna is saying that although the Jnani is most dear, all these devotees are very noble. Why is Krishna calling these devotees as noble? He is saying they are very generous, they are udara, they are very magnanimous. Isn't it actually the other way around? All these devotees, what they are doing? They are seeking the Lord. And the Lord is fulfilling all their desires. So actually, He is the one who is generous, isn't it? But why is Krishna saying that they are very noble? Because He feels that even if their purpose is only to seek something from Him, at least they are turning to Him instead of going here and there. They want Aishwarya, They want to regain lost wealth, they want kaivalya, atmanubhava, they want bhakti, whatever it is, they are turning to him. They are not running here and there. At least people who want kaivalya and bhakti have to turn to Lord. But people who are seeking aishwarya, who are seeking prosperity and wealth, they can find other means to fulfill those desires, but they are turning to Krishna. So Krishna is saying they are giving me an opportunity to serve them, to give them what they are asking. That is why he is saying they are noble, they are Udara. Now, the Acharyas explained to us that if Krishna is saying like this, then does it mean that it is acceptable for us to ask all these things from the Lord? Is he trying to say that, okay, okay, you ask whatever you want and it's fine, I will give whatever it is? He will give, definitely. But should we be asking for all these things? Here, it is told that in the initial stages of sadhana, when we are still in the kindergarten stage, when we have just started to do sadhana, it is understandable that we will approach the Lord. It is good, instead of wasting our time with this and that, instead of being lost in sensual pleasure only, instead of seeking help from human beings. It is better that we should turn to the Lord to get whatever we want, to fulfill our desires. We are turning and praying to the Lord and saying that, oh Lord, you fulfill our desires. So in the initial stages, this is fine. We have heard of what is called as sakama sadhana, where people say, you we what in Kannada it is called as harke. They have some kind of a condition. They say, I you please give me this, I will do this for you. If you give me this desire, I will do that. If you help me to get this contract, then I will arrange some Kalyanotsava in the temple. If you help me to get this job, then I will do some Annadana. Like that, people say that you give me this and in return I will do that. So it's like a contract that they are trying to make, some bartering with the Lord. So that is what we call as Sakama sadhana, where they do sadhana with some kama in their mind, with some desire. It is okay for the initial stages, but as the devotee progresses, he should progress further and he should move to the stage of what is called as nishkama karma, nishkama sadhana. That is to do sadhana, to turn to the Lord without expectation of anything. In fact, some places in the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, it is told that there are people who are called as Ekanti, and then there are people who are called as Paramekanti. The Ekanti means for them, for everything that they want in this world, they will turn to the Lord. So he is the only one, Eka. He is the only one to whom they turn. So such a person is called as an Ekanti. But it is not enough to be an Ekanti and stop there. One should aspire to go to the stage of becoming Paramekanti. Paramekanti is the one who is a Parama Ekanti. Now, when he will turn only to the Lord, but he is Parama, he is very great. In what sense? He turns to the Lord for giving pleasure to the Lord. He turns to the Lord because he has realized that there is no other alternative for him. He has no desire to seek of the Lord, but out of love for the Lord, out of bhakti, his only desire is to constantly remember the Lord and to stay in the sanidhya of the Lord. His only desire is to serve the Lord and to serve the devotees of the Lord. So that person is called as a Paramekanti. So initially everybody will be maybe going here and there. Then they will turn only to Krishna. So they will become Ekanti. But then they should try and move to the next stage where they don't desire anything from the Lord, but only for the purpose of doing seva to Him, only for the purpose of kainkaryam, only for the purpose of serving the Lord and giving pleasure to Him through our service. With that in mind, the devotee turns to the Lord. So, this is what is advised for us as the goal. We may be at different stages. We cannot say that we are at a higher stage. We are still at the level where some trouble comes in our life. We are turning to God. So, yes, it is better that we should turn to God rather than thinking that we will solve the problem ourselves or saying that there is somebody in this world who is going to solve the problem for me. So, to understand that falling at the Lord's feet only is the solution is good. But if we are only doing that when a problem comes, I'm going to fall at the Lord's feet. When problem comes, I'm turning to the Lord and I'm begging Him, please solve this problem for me. Please solve this problem for me. That is फिर भी inferior. One needs to move beyond this stage to the stage of acceptance that everything is happening in my life is as per my prarabdha. Everything that is happening is sent by the Lord to teach me. It is incidents which happen are because the Lord wants me to get rid of my Papa and Punya account. So He's sending all this to make me more developed, more matured in my bhakti. And that whatever comes in my life, I will always be a servant of the Lord. I will always be doing seva to Him and to His bhaktas. That I will do Bhagavat Seva and I will do Bhagavata Seva. That should be the purpose, that should be the goal in our mind. So, like this, we have to move. Now, Krishna is saying that although they are all noble, but in my opinion, the Jnani is my Atma. Now, he's saying all these categories of people are there, yes, but out of all those, the Jnani is my Atma. Now, normally, what is this connection of Atma? We say that when there is a body and there is a soul, when there is Sharira and there is Atma, the Atma is the most critical thing for the body to survive. If the Atma is not there, then the body falls. So the Atma is the most important thing. So here Krishna is saying that these jnanis are my Atma. So he is saying they are the most valuable thing for me. Now, how do we accept this? Everywhere in all the Shastras, in all the Vedas, the Upanishads, and everywhere, it is told that Lord is Antaratma to everyone. Lord is the soul for everyone. So when that is the case, to say, for the Lord to say that Jnani is my Atma, isn't it contradictory? How can you say, on the one hand, all these, whatever is there in the Vedas and Upanishads is what the Lord Himself has told. So all there it is told that I am the soul for everybody, He's saying. Now suddenly in the Bhagavad Gita, He's saying that the Jnani is my Atma. How can this entity called my Atma be an Jivatma, a Jnani who is in this world? So it sounds very contradictory. But then the Acharyas point out here that he is telling. Now, whatever he has told in the Shastras, that is the authority, that is the pramana, that is there definitely. But here he is telling that Jnani tu Atma iva me matam. He is telling that this is my mata, this is my opinion. So, this is what feeling, what opinion the Lord has. So, in other words, he's trying to convey how preciously he hangs on, he holds on to the Jnani. Just as our Sharira, our body, cannot live without our soul, so also the Lord says that when He says the Jnani is my Atma, then He means that He cannot live without the Jnanis. They are His soul. So that is why if there is a devotee who is a Jnani, this devotee will be such that he also can't bear separation from the Lord. And Lord also can't bear separation from this devotee. Therefore, ultimately, this Jnani devotee attains the lotus feet of the Lord. If we want to look for examples of who were such Jnani devotees, then the Alvars were definitely such devotees. It is told about Nammalvar that he was able to see the Lord's presence. He was, for him, everything in this world was only the Lord. So when he saw a calf, he would embrace that calf, saying that, oh, this is the calf which was raised by Govinda. If he saw a cow, he would embrace that cow and say that, oh, this is the cow who was taken for grazing in, Brindavan by Govinda. If he saw a snake, he ran behind the snake. For him, it was not the snake, but he ran behind the snake thinking that, oh, this is the Adishesha on whom Narayana is resting. Then, if he sees fire somewhere, he puts his hand and tries to touch that fire, saying that this fire, this is the radiance of the Divya, Vigraha of my Lord, the divine form of my Lord. This fire, this is that same radiance that my Lord has. So, like this, when the Alvar is having so much of, constant attention only on the Lord and not wanting anything else in this world, no eating, no sleeping, nothing, only lost in the ecstasy of thinking and remembering the Lord, then these are the kind of devotees for whom the Lord says, they are my Atma. And because Lord also can't bear their separation, and they also can't bear separation from the Lord, they ultimately very quickly attain His lotus feet. So this is what we have to understand from this shloka. Now we move on to the next shloka where Krishna is explaining that, see, such kind of jnanis, I have talked about them, but don't think that they are so easy to find. It is very, 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 very rare to find such a jnani who is my Atma, who has such divine, no, unending love for me. So he says in this 19th shloka, and this is a very famous shloka which is often quoted, Bahunam janmanamante jnanavatma prapatyate vasudeva sarvamiti samahatma sudurlabha. So he says, Bahunam janmanamante, at the end of many births, this jnani, this person who is having all this jnana, he takes refuge in me. He becomes Sharanagata to me. Why does he become Sharanagata to me? Because he realizes that Vasudeva is everything. Vasudeva Sarvam. Vasudeva is everything. But to find such a Mahatma, he calls such a person as Mahatma. It is not just Durlabha, it is Sudurlabha. It is very, very, very rare to find such a great person. So, this is the greatness of such a type of jnani. The one who realizes that the Lord is everything, that Vasudeva is everything, and he pines for union with that Lord. Such a devotee is called as Mahatma. We have seen how in our worldly life we have addressed this um, term of Mahatma for this one and that one and ordinary human beings who showed some little extra level of, maybe tolerance or ability to bear pain and things like that. But in reality, who is the Mahatma? The Atma who is so Mahan. And why that Atma is Mahan? Because it is constantly ever in communion with the Lord. Only such an Atma deserves this title as Krishna is giving to be called as Mahatma. So this devotee Krishna is saying Sudurlabha, extremely rare, next to impossible. It is very, very, very difficult. The Lord Himself, He has all power. He knows everything. He is omnipotent, omniscient. He can see everybody, he can find everything. There's nothing which is impossible for Him. But this Lord Himself says that finding such a bhakta, such a devotee, such a jnani is sudurlabha. That means we can understand how extremely difficult it is to find such a devotee. And if somebody has to reach this stage, it will happen only after they have spent many janmas practicing bhakti to the Lord. So, only someone who reaches, who has gone through many janmas, constantly thinking about the Lord, praying to Him, being a bhakta, after he is fully refined and all his karma vasana, everything have gone away, and then he is like totally purified in that fire of his tapas, that bhakti that he has done, then only he will reach the stage where he says that Vasudeva Sarvam. Now, here there's an interesting thing that we should note. In most of the other sampradayas, where most other acharyas have given vyakhyana, they say that when this statement comes, that Vasudeva Sarvamiti, so they say that what it means is the bhakta's understanding that Vasudeva is in everything. Vasudeva Sarvam. Vasudeva is all pervading. He is in everything. This is how the common understanding of these words are taken as. But Swami Ramanuja has added one unique vyakhya to this. He says not only that Vasudeva is in everything, Vasudeva Sarvam, Vasudeva is in everything, but for me, Vasudeva is Sarvam. For me, everything is Vasudeva. So I hope you are able to appreciate the difference between these two viewpoints. The viewpoint to say that Vasudeva is in everything, yes, that is common knowledge. Everybody who is a bhakta accepts that everything in this world has Vasudeva in it. Everything in this world is supported by Vasudeva. The very name Vasudeva, when you say that part, the Vasu part refers to being in residence. And Vasudeva is the one who is residing in everything in this world. So that understanding everybody has. But what Swami Ramanuja explains here is that this meaning for this term Vasudeva Sarvam, that not only Vasudeva is in everything, but for me, Vasudeva is Sarvam. Vasudeva is everything for me. That means for such a bhakta, there is nothing in this world other than Vasudeva. Such a bhakta only takes refuge in Krishna. He only meditates on the Lord all the time, thinking that this Vasudeva is my goal. He is only the means also. That means he is the upaya and he is the upeya. He is the goal whom I want to reach. He is only the means. If I want to reach him, I have to constantly remember him. I have to chant his names. And that is the means for me to attain him. Whatever other desire in my mind may be there. That also is Vasudeva. Everything for me is Vasudeva. So this is the very unique kind of explanation that is given. And we know of examples of bhaktas who have been like this. Swami Nammalvar, who was the foremost among the Alvars, who has written so many of those Divya Prabandhams, he says that this is very famously quoted every time. He says, Unnum sor, pargum neer, tinnum vettale, ellam kannan. Unnum sor means the food which we eat, the food that is eaten. Pargum neer means the water which is drunk. And the betel leaf which is chewed. Everything is Krishna. Everything is Kannan. Why is he saying this? Because always we eat food, we drink water for our nourishment, for sustaining us. So they are Dharaka and Poshaka. They are the things which are required for us to survive and for us to get nutrition, to get nourished and to grow. So Dharakam and Poshakam, food and water, for me, they are Kannan. And then any enjoyment that I may have, betel leaf is chewed. That is supposed to indicate enjoyment. It is symbolic of enjoyment. So when somebody is having any enjoyment also, such a bhakta, for him, the food and water, the dharakam and poshakam is um, the Lord only. And whatever he seeks to enjoy, that bhogya, what is there, that also is Lord only. So such kind of bhaktas, no wonder Krishna is saying that they are very rare. Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. So same way we can see other examples also we know of great bhaktas who have always been in remembrance of the Lord. So if you take the example of the well-known woman saint who is Mirabai, she gave up everything that was happening in the world, and she lost interest in everything, and for her everything was Krishna only. So this kind of devotees, if we try to find nowadays, we don't find anybody. So they are, that is what is the meaning of saying that such kind of devotees are very 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 rare to find. They are sudurlabha. So this is what Krishna is explaining in this shloka. So not only that somebody says, the bhakta who says that Vasudeva is in everything, but he says that for me, Vasudeva is everything. That is the unique explanation that Swami Ramanuja has given for this particular shloka. So now we will move on to another aspect, that today, on this day, this is the nakshatra, the Tiru Nakshatram, the birth anniversary of this great Acharya, this great person who was a Shishya of Ramanujacharya, called Kuratalvan. Now, if we, I think I have talked about this person even before. Kuratalvan, he was living in a grama called Kuram, and he was called as Kuresha first. Then he was very much renowned for his charity and all that. And one day, when he closed the door of his house after finishing all the Annadana, that sound was heard in the Kanchipuram temple. Now, Kanchipuram is some distance away from Kuram, but the Lord and Devi Tayar, they heard that sound of his door closing, and they inquired with the Archakar about who is that, what is that sound. So then next day that Archaka came running and told Kuratalvan that the Lord and Devi were talking about you. So this immediately, this Kuratalvan felt so ashamed. He said, what is this? Do I need the Lord and Devi? They are the masters of the universe. They are the ones who are having all the Aishwarya. Do I need to be recognized for them by them as somebody who is doing charity? What charity can I do bigger than what they are already doing to the entire universe? But it is so egoistic of me that I got recognized by them for this thing. No, no, I should be recognized by the Lord and Devi for my bhakti. And that on that very moment, he decided, he gave up everything, he gave away all his belongings, and with his wife, he went and he started walking from Kuram. He left that very evening and left to go to Srirangam to meet his Acharya Ramanuja. Till then, he was only a sporadic kind of disciple. He would go occasionally, meet Acharya, but he didn't have seriousness about that. However, this incident, it what you say, motivated him. It brought a turning point in his life, and he decided that he's going to dedicate himself to Swami Ramanuja. And he became, although he was older in age to Ramanujacharya, he became his disciple. There are many incidents in the life of this Kuratalvan. He is the one who was instrumental in helping Swami Ramanuja to compose the Sri Bhashya. So that we will talk about some other day. But here today, because we said this, this whole thing about we've been talking about who is this Mahatma like this, who is Sudurlabha. So, in relation to that kind of devotion that Kuratalvan had, or how the Lord himself appreciated Kuratalvan, I just want to narrate one incident. So, what happened was this Kuratalvan was married to one lady called Andal. Now, please note this Andal is different from the Andal who was Periyalvar's daughter and who has sung the Tirupavai. That is different. But this Kuratalvan, now, how he got married to her is also a very amazing kind of incident. He was the, king, the chieftain for one particular area, that Kuram, that Grama, he was the chief there. So occasionally he had this habit that he would go around, he would take up some disguise and he would go to all the places, go walk around his area and want to find out whether people are happy, people are in good condition, are they having any problem? Because sometimes people don't reveal those things to the king. So he was doing that regularly. One day, like that in disguise, one evening, he went. And wherever he went, everybody was happy and everything was fine. But in one house, he heard the sound of somebody crying. So he went near the window and stood outside and he wanted to listen. Why are they in pain? What is their trouble that they are having? Now, what happened is he heard them talking. There was one mother and father and their daughter, this Andal, and her parents. So they were moaning and bemoaning the fact that somebody had seen the jyoti, the chart, astrological chart, the horoscope of that girl, and told that there was some defect in her chart such that if she got married, then whomever she married, within 1 year that person would die, that husband would die. So they were all, like totally distraught. Now, who will marry this girl? And in those times, it is not unthinkable to think that some girl will be allowed to remain unmarried. So, what to do? They were caught in such a great fix, and that's why they were crying. This Kuratalvan heard that. Then he walked inside and he talked to them and he told them, he revealed himself. And they were so surprised at why he has come there. And then he made an even more surprising announcement. He said, if you are willing, I will marry your daughter. So they said, no, 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 you are the Raja of this place and you are such a great soul. And if we have just been talking that this girl, whoever marries, within 1 year they will die. So why should we put you to that? And this entire kingdom will suffer if something happens to you. No, no, we can't allow that, they said. He said, no, there are two aspects in this. One is that whenever these astrology and all these horoscopes they show something, they this whole thing about marriage and what happens after marriage in the boys and girls horoscope, all that is related to two aspects. One is to their worldly life, to their ability to have children, their ability to live as a dampati, as a couple, as a grihastha couple in the world, and do their worldly responsibilities. The other aspect is that once they get married, are they doing dharma karya? So whatever is there in her astrological forecast, that only applies to her laukika life. But if I want a wife who is going to be with me in my dharma karya, I am not going to marry her because I want to enjoy sense pleasure with her or because I want to beget children. And that is not at all. Leading a worldly life is not at all my lookout. I don't want her for that reason. But I am bent on living a life where I'm going to serve a lot of people and to do charity. So she will be very useful to me in that role. So as my dharma, partner, as my ardhangini in the dharma path, I want to marry your daughter. I will marry your daughter. We will not have any laukika sambandha. We will not have any normal relation. We will not consummate the marriage. It will not be like a normal husband and wife relation. But we will be together on the path of dharma and serve the Lord together. So I will marry her and nothing will happen to me. He reassured them. So then these parents, they called all the famous astrologers and all that and asked everybody that, see, he's telling like this, is that true? They also concurred. They said, yes, it is told in the Dharma Shastras. And therefore, this marriage was fixed and they got married. Now, all their life, with that nishtha, they were husband and wife, but for the sake of only doing their duty as grihasthas. There was no other conjugal relationship between them. And therefore, they lived, nothing happened to Kuratalvan as he had predicted. He lived a very long life. However, later they had children. Now, how did they get those children? Since they didn't have any consummation of the marriage, it was not possible for them to have children by their usual way. How that came about is also a very amazing incident. What happens once is when they are in Srirangam, many years. By now, Swami Ramanujacharya has become very old. This Kuratalban himself has become quite old. And one, he used to live his life, he used to, earn his livelihood by doing unchavritti. Every day he would go out to beg alms, and whatever he gets by begging, that much only they will have, and they will consume that on that day, and they are done with it. So, like this one day, it was raining very heavily. And because of that, he was not able to go for the unchavritti. When he couldn't go, he just stayed quiet. He was perfectly content. His wife, she's also such a great woman. Imagine their greatness if they have had so much, uh, you know, control and mastery over their senses that they have never indulged in any kind of a relationship. So they were both very great people. So she was also quiet. But because being a wife, what happened is in the night, they didn't have anything the whole day, and at night also nothing was there. So they just offered water to the Lord, and they sipped that water, and they were ready. They were lying down ready to go to sleep. At that moment, this Andal, she felt very bad. She felt severe pain in her heart. And what happened was, why she was feeling that pain, not because she was hungry, but because her husband is hungry. And at that moment, what happened is the bell of the Srirangam temple rang. They heard that bell ringing. And when they heard that bell ringing, then this Andal, she suddenly in her mind, she called out to Ranganatha and she said, "What is this, O Ranga? You are having nice meal. How can you enjoy that meal which you are having when your dear devotee is lying in hunger here? How can you enjoy that meal?" She just expressed that feeling in her mind. She didn't even say it out loud. That very moment, in that temple, the Naivedya was being offered. After some time, everything was done. All the temple archakar, everybody went back home and everyone went to sleep. Suddenly, that archakar had a dream where he heard Ranganatha telling him, wake up fast. Go and give my prasada, the Naivedya that you offered me. Go and give that prasada to this Kuratalvan. My dear devotee is lying hungry. How can I be happy and at peace when he is hungry? Please go at once. Go right now and give him the prasada. So that archaka rushed and he went. He took the prasada of the Lord and he went and rushed to this Kuratalvan's house and gave it. He knocked the door. They were both shocked. Who is knocking at this odd time of the night? And that go to see that Archaka had come with the prasada, and he narrated that the Lord came in my dream and he told me that this prasada has to be given to you because you are hungry. You've been hungry the whole day. So they accepted the prasada for him, and the Archakar went back. Then, as soon as that prasada came to them and they came into the house with the prasada, Kurutalvan turned to his wife and he asked her, "Is this your doing? Did you have something to do with this?" He asked. So she narrated. She confessed what had happened. That, see, I got this thought and I said like that to Lord Ranganatha in my mind. At that moment, Kuratalvan chided her. He said, "See, is this the way you should ask the Lord for something? He is such a great, magnanimous entity. He is the Swami of this entire universe. And I am nothing but a papi. I am a sinner who is having this bodily form. How can you go and ask that Lord, that great Lord, who is so, benevolent on us? How can you go and ask him to give something to feed the belly of this sinner like me? Isn't it wrong what you did? You need not have done that. How could you say something like that to Ranga?" He asked. So she said, "Yes, I agree, but I don't know. At that moment, I felt like that, and that's why I begged the Lord. I pleaded with the Lord," she said. So then, anyway, the Lord has sent the prasada. It cannot be refused. It cannot be discarded. So with lot of gratitude, with lot of feeling of being blessed by the Lord, both of them, they took tiny morsel of that prasada. They didn't eat lots. They just took one tiny morsel because it was the Lord's prasada, and they went to sleep. And that night, when they went to sleep, in Kuratalvan's dream again, Ranganathar came and he told him that, "Don't think that I have sent that food to fill your hunger, the hunger of this physical body of yours. There is a spiritual hunger in you, and I want you to be the father of two children who have to do lots of seva and kainkariya for the sampradaya. I want that to happen through you, through your children. Now, since it is not possible for you to have children by the other way that normally people have, this what I have sent is the bija. Today, whatever prasada you have consumed, I sent it not to fulfill your physical hunger, but to give you progeny, to give you two children. Two children will be born to you, and those children will be the forebearers of this Vaishnava Sampradaya. And just as the Lord had told, after the particular time, this lady Andal, she became pregnant. So we can understand the greatness of this, what we are describing. There was no physical communion. There was no normal way of begetting children. But that Andal Amma, she became pregnant. And then at the end of 9 months, she delivered twins. And those children were named as Vyasa Bhattar, Veda Vyasa Bhattar, and Parashara Bhattar. And that Parashara Bhattar is the one who was next in the line of Acharyas. After Swami Ramanuja, there was one, his cousin called Govinda, who later got the name as Embar Swami. So that Embar Swami, and next after Embar Swami was this Parashara Bhattar, who was the son of Kuratalvan. So like this, when somebody has so much bhakti for the Lord, then the Lord feels that they are his responsibility. They are everything for him. So this also, whatever I have narrated now, this story, this event, this also highlights that same tattva to us. So we are so blessed that we have in our parampara, we have the good fortune, the sukrita of being able to hear about all these great people, all these great devotees of the Lord. So let us try and imbibe some of those qualities, whatever is possible to some extent. And let us pray that the Lord will bless us in our endeavor to do this. We should also aim to get to the stage where we are one of those jnanis, if not in this janma, in some other janma. But let us start making our efforts to get to that stage where the Lord says that this jnani is my Atma. So, with that, let us offer Kritagnyata, gratitude at the lotus feet of Sri Krishna and Guru, who have inspired us to start and to join this satsang. Let us pray for their blessings and grace to always be on us. Thank you, everybody, for attending. We will meet again next Friday as usual. Namaskar.